Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is invent something first. In 1890, Louis Le Prince vanished without a trace, just days before he was set to unveil the first motion picture. His disappearance was quiet, forgotten, but when you look into who stood to lose everything if he succeeded, it starts to feel a lot like something we've seen before. Something like the octopus. In September 1890, Louis Le Prince boarded a train to Dijon, France. He was headed to Paris to finalize plans for a public demonstration that would have changed history. Le Prince wasn't just an inventor. He may have been the inventor of motion pictures. Before Edison, before the Lumière brothers, before Hollywood was anything more than orange groves and dust. But Louis never arrived. Somewhere between Dijon and Paris, he vanished. No body, no witnesses, and no clues. Just an empty seat, a stunned family, and a legacy that was about to be erased. His luggage made it. The train completed its journey, but the man himself was gone. Like a frame ripped from a reel, never to be recovered. It wasn't just the suddenness that haunted people. It was the timing. Le Prince was on the cusp of changing the world. He was days away from a public demonstration in New York City. He had the prototype, the patents, the footage, and then nothing. Silence. An inventor swallowed by the space between two cities. There was no ransom demand, no farewell letter, no confirmed sighting, just gone. And here's where it turns from a strange story to something far darker. Because when you look at what he was about to unveil, and who stood to lose if he succeeded, his disappearance starts to feel less like a mystery and more like a warning, a buried story, a silent eraser. What if the vanishing of Louis Le Prince wasn't just misfortune? What if someone somewhere ensured that the world wouldn't see what he created? And I'm kind of like inclined to think that it had something to do with like the government, because Hollywood wasn't a thing. Louis Le Prince was born in Metz, France, 1841. His childhood wasn't defined by wealth or notoriety, but by curiosity. His father was friends with legendary inventor Louis Daguerre, the father of photography. And young Louis spent time in Daguerre's studio watching chemical images come to life on silver plates. It left a mark. As a young adult, Le Prince studied painting in Paris, chemistry in Leipzig, and photography in England. He was a true hybrid, artist and engineer, chemist and dreamer. When he eventually settled in Leeds, he married Elizabeth Whitley, herself from a family of photographers, and joined a firm that specialized in photoceramics. It was here that his obsession with capturing movement truly began. And not in a way like you would with a camera, right? Like, I'm a photographer, and it's not like if I were to set my camera up to like speed capture, where it just goes pop, 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 then I'm getting the movement, but it's obviously got that gap, so it's not as smooth naturally, right? Like if you don't know. But you are able to capture things within those frames that you wouldn't be able to capture if you just went click and got one photo. Which, if you ask me, I love using speed. I almost have it on, especially when I'm shooting nature. I almost always have it on the whole time. Just hold it, beautiful. He wasn't content with still frames. Le Prince wanted to mimic the way the human eye saw motion, fluid, seamless, alive. He began experimenting with multi-lens cameras, using synchronized shutters to capture sequential images. Basically what I just explained. But he quickly moved to a single lens system, far ahead of its time. His goal wasn't just to take pictures. It was to tell a visual story, frame by frame. In 1888, he filmed what is now believed to be the earliest surviving motion picture, the Round Hay Garden scene. It's only 2.11 seconds long. 4 people, his in-laws and a friend, walk briefly in a circle. The film is jumpy, ghost-like, and grainy, but it moves, and that changed everything. Le Prince also filmed scenes of horse-drawn traffic over Leeds Bridge, experimenting with perspective and framing. What he had wasn't a toy, it was a system. Camera, film, projection, and a working model of cinema. This was years before Edison would show anything to the public. Years before Lumière brothers held their legendary screenings. Le Prince was first, but the world wouldn't learn that until long after it was too late. In the late 1800s, invention was blood sport. It wasn't just about creating something new, it was about being the first to file a patent, to showcase it to the public, and to secure your place in history. And with cinema, the stakes were enormous. Whoever could capture and display moving images stood to change the world and profit massively from it. Louis Le Prince had already filed a U.S. patent in 1886 for a 16-lens motion picture camera. But he didn't stop there. He developed a single-lens version to streamline the process, closer to what would eventually become the standard. This was the true breakthrough. His camera could film real-life movement, and he had already proven it by recording the Round Hay Garden scene and footage of Leeds Bridge. This is like insane. Could you imagine 16 lenses just to capture one step? That would be crazy. It's like, okay, move, stop. Like, then you're just, okay, hold on, let's get the new pieces in here. And okay, move, stop. Let's get the other. That would be insane. That'd be crazy. Thank God we are able to advance in technology and it's not like that anymore, right? But his financial resources were limited and his public exposure was minimal. Meanwhile, in the United States, Thomas Edison, already hailed as the Wizard of Menlo Park, was putting the finishing touches on a kinetoscope, a device that would eventually be credited for launching cinema. Here's where things get tense. Louis Le Prince was preparing for a public demonstration in New York. He planned to unveil not just the camera, but a projector too. An entire ecosystem for capturing and viewing moving images. If he succeeded, it would blow Edison's work out of the water. And Edison knew it. He was aggressively filing patents in motion picture technology, despite not having a fully functioning system until years later. If Le Prince arrived in America and publicly demonstrated his invention, it would undercut Edison's claims and alter the course of film history. This was more than a race. It was a collision course. And only one name would survive. Like, imagine if it wasn't so just headbutt and they would be able to like work with each other and like get something going. It's nuts to me. Edison did file a lot of patents though. Was Edison involved? Let's address the elephant in the room. No pun intended, being that he electrocuted an elephant. Thomas Edison is one of America's most celebrated inventors, but his legacy is also shadowed by aggressive litigation, ruthless business tactics, and a long history of just crushing his rivals. He was known for patent wars, buying up competitors, and destroying technologies that threatened his financial empire. So when Louise Le Prince disappeared just before a public demonstration of a working motion picture system, and Edison filed patents shortly after, people started asking questions. In 1891, Edison filed for his first motion picture camera patent. In 1893, he held a public demonstration, and by the late 1890s, he was widely credited with inventing film. But behind the scenes, there were cracks in that story, and Le Prince's family wasn't going to let it go. Le Prince's son, Adolphe, spent years trying to restore his father's legacy. In 1898, he testified in a landmark case between Edison and the American Mutoscope Company, who were challenging Edison's monopoly on film technology. Adolphe brought forward his father's patents. He presented Roundhay Garden scene footage and camera blueprints that predated Edison's work. The courtroom was forced to acknowledge that someone else had gotten there first. But it wasn't enough. The legal system was stacked in Edison's favor. Without Louise alive to defend his claims, the court deferred to Edison's existing power and infrastructure. The case was dismissed. Was Edison involved in Le Prince's disappearance? No direct evidence has ever surfaced. No letters, no contracts, no eyewitnesses. But to some historians, it's the silence that's suspicious. Edison had motive. He had the most to gain, and Le Prince's vanishing ensured there would be no rival claim in court. Conspiracy, coincidence, or just a ruthless system where only the loudest voice gets remembered. For over a century, Le Prince's fate remained a mystery. But in 2003, a discovery in the Paris police archives reawakened the case. Buried deep in the municipal records, researchers uncovered a black and white photograph of a drowned man pulled from the Seine River, dated just weeks after Le Prince disappeared. The image is disturbing. The corpse is swollen, his features distorted by water, but unmistakably familiar. The same drooping mustache, the same sloping brow. The age is right, the timeline fits. The height and weight match recorded descriptions. The man had never been identified. No family had claimed the body, and no report linked it to the missing inventor. It was logged, photographed, and filed away, forgotten like so many lost souls of the industrial age. But here's the chilling part. The body had a faint mark on the temple, one consistent with a blunt impact. Could it have been a mugging, a forced fall, or something more deliberate? If it was Le Prince, did he jump, or was he pushed? At the time, Paris was teeming with crime. The scene saw hundreds of bodies per year. Many were suicides. Many were undocumented deaths. But Louise Le Prince, the man on the brink of revolutionizing visual storytelling, had every reason to live. He had a future, and he had a purpose. Some speculate he may have been followed off the train, that he never made it to his Paris meeting because someone was waiting, that he was intercepted, silenced, and dumped. After all, once he vanished, no one could challenge Edison's claims. To this day, there's no way to definitively confirm the corpse's identity. DNA was never preserved. The body was buried in a communal grave with others unclaimed. But the photo, the resemblance, it's undeniable. And it adds a grim, lingering weight to a story already heavy with loss. What if the world's first filmmaker spent his final moments gasping for air in a river, his legacy sinking with him? For decades, Louis Le Prince's name was little more than a historical footnote. He wasn't included in textbooks. Film classes skipped over him. Hollywood never mentioned him. And the broader public had no idea the entire industry might have been built on someone else's work, someone who never got the chance to show it. But that's finally starting to change. In recent years, institutions like the British Film Institute, the National Science and Media Museum in Bradford, and film historians across Europe and the US have begun re-centering Le Prince in the origin story of cinema. His surviving footage, Roundhay Garden scene and Leeds Bridge, has been digitized and studied. His original camera has been preserved. His patents have been re-examined in context. More importantly, his story is being told, and not just as a what if, but as a warning about how easily legacy can be stolen, buried, or rewritten by the louder voice. In 2015, artist and filmmaker David Nicholas Wilkinson released a documentary titled The First Film, which meticulously argued Le Prince's rightful place in cinema history. It reignited the debate and reminded the world that being first doesn't always mean being remembered. That honor often goes to those with power, money, and access. Edison had all three. Le Prince had invention and vision. And when he vanished, so did the only direct challenge to Edison's claims. There's something tragic about that. A man who saw the future, who literally filmed the future, was lost in the shadows of his own time. His voice silenced, his footage nearly forgotten, and his name nearly erased. But now that eraser is being undone, slowly, deliberately, and the man who invented film, only to vanish before the world could witness it, is finally stepping back into frame. One reel at a time. And this is like the truth of that era. You know, I mean, I guess you could speculate, well, Edison is like totally on the opposite side of the world. Like, I don't know if they mean like Menlo Park somewhere else, but I know what Menlo Park, California is. And that being said, if you're looking at it like that, from Menlo Park, California to Paris, right? Which it may not be Menlo Park, California, but that's beside the point. That's just how it was back then. And so if Thomas Edison is clear on the other side of the globe, you got to think about this. Like, how do back in like before 1900, how are you going to sit there and go, okay, you're hired to off this dude? Like I can't fathom how long it would take for a letter to get to somebody for him to know exactly when Le Prince is going to be doing this stuff. So it's just kind of like, could Edison have been a part of it? Yeah, maybe. But I mean, like, he'd kind of have to be there. He would have to have some sort of word from somebody over there telling him, hey, this guy's going to drop this stuff. But I guess if you have the money, like, you kind of have the people everywhere. Who freaking knows? That's a really big thing to speculate. I'm not going to get into it. This has been Cracked Relic. This has been my coverage of Louis Le Prince, the man who invented filmmaking. Sources will be in the description and coming up after this. And thank you for watching.